Been a while since I've made a video. I've been on vacation and I've been working hard to finish up Milando's guide to Magical Marvels, which is thankfully almost finished. It's 99% finished and it will be coming out on PDF this week. So that's a good thing. But while I've been away for most of July, all of July, Wizards of the Coast actually put out a new book, Journey Through the Radiant Citadel. Now I haven't had the time to actually go through all of the adventures and play through them, so I won't be discussing the adventures themselves, but what I have had time to do is go over the creature stat blocks that we find in the adventures. So yeah, that's the video. I just want to go through the new stat blocks, see what kind of direction Wizards of the Coast are going with their monster design, and give you my thoughts on the creatures that we get in Journeys Through the Radiant Citadel. So I have it open here on D&D Beyond. And as you can see, they've been kind enough to just give us the stat blocks down here so we don't have to jump around too much. Now the first creature we get here is the Windling. It's a half CR creature, so obviously it's not going to be that powerful. It can turn invisible and it has Trickster's Flight where it can move up to 30 feet if someone misses it with an attack roll and do so without provoking attacks of opportunity. Now, it's a half CR creature. It's not going to be a lot of fun, and it isn't. It can turn invisible, it can get away. It's a very evasive creature, but it's not really doing anything new. It's not really doing anything that I think is particularly entertaining. Next creature we have here is the Shoal Shaker. Now, this is actually one of the better creatures, I think, because it can cast a geese spell on other creatures without using spell components, which is kind of awesome. Now it's interesting that Wizards of the Coast have put the G-spell stuff up here under the creature's traits, and that's of course because it takes a minute to cast geese, so it doesn't get to do it as an action. It's something it can do like 1 minute as usual. So that would be where spellcasting would have been before, and that's also where we get the geese spell here. Reconstruction, and this is a fun feature because the Soul Shaker explodes into up to 7 or up to 9 actually crawling claws when it dies, which of course makes it a lot more dangerous in combat because crawling claws, although they are challenge rating 0 creatures, are still creatures, so it does something even after you destroy it. It can then also of course come back to life. Crushing Grasp I think is fine. It can grapple, which I also like to put on creatures, like allowing it to grapple other creatures when it hits, because that can impact the combat if the creature that's been grappled, the character that's been grappled, can't just immediately run away afterwards. And then we have Consume Vitality, where it takes a creature it's grappling, it deals some necrotic damage, and it also steals life equal to the amount. So this is one of the more fun creatures, although when you really boil it down to what it is, geese is not going to be useful in combat. So this is basically a creature that grapples you and then uses a bonus action to suck your life. It's not going to impose any other conditions on you. It's not going to restrain you. It's not going to impact how you fight in combat, besides reducing your move speed to 0, which a lot of creatures or a lot of characters don't really care about when they're already in melee combat. So again, it's a fine creature. It's, as I said, one of the better creatures in the book, but it's not really something that pushes the boundaries of what we can do in 5th edition. Then we have the colo. I'll say it's pronounced like that. For me, this is just... I think it's fun enough. It's a challenge rating 5 creature. Normal talent attack, it can change shape, that's fine. Magic resistance, that's fine. Then it has this Plague Winds feature, and that's its fun feature basically, where it deals it's again the Constitution saving throw. It deals cold damage and also poisons a creature that takes cold damage. Then they can't regain hit points and they gain levels of exhaustion. And it can automatically succeed if it is in direct sunlight, so it's something you're going to get rid of fairly quickly. It can also use lesser restoration and so on, but that won't work unless the creature isn't in direct sunlight. My issue with this creature is not the Plague Winds ability. I like that ability. I think it's fun. It can really make an dungeon delve stressful. My issue with it is that it still just have actions. It'll do 2 talent attacks or use Plague Winds. That's it. It's not gonna do bonus actions, reactions, anything that makes it a bit more dynamic. It's basically you either have Plague Winds up, you're gonna use Plague Winds, or you're gonna use talents. And that's just not, for me, the most fun monster design, because it's very clear what the creature's tactics are gonna be on every turn of combat. The only random thing is whether or not you're going to recharge on a 5 or 6 when the Tlakatekolol's turn comes up. Then we have Aurum Vax, and these are some, they feed on metal as far as I can tell, and they are small monstrosities. I don't know if we get a picture of them. Okay, here we are, yes. So they're these feline, cat-like, ferret-like creatures. Again, the standard Aurum Vorax is quite boring because it just deals damage, then maybe regain some hit points when it deals damage, okay. And then it can grapple a creature. And that's it. Again, not something that I find hugely entertaining. It's basically any other beast creature in the monster manual with some lifesteal attached to it. The Aurum Vax Den Leader is much in the same style. It can use its bite, and when it does so, it can either get advantage on attack rolls, or it can invigorate itself and gain hit points, and then it has the same grappling claw attack. So it does get more fun because it has these options, but again, I'd much rather see it have bonus actions, reactions, anything fun and dynamic that sort of makes it a bit unpredictable what tactics it's going to use, or at least evens out its action economy with the characters. So yeah, that's the Aurum Vorax. And then we have the clottle. Again, that's my attempt. The salamander creature is as a fire aura. This is pretty classic. We see this on the Pit Fiend or the Baler or both already. Regeneration, also pretty classic. It's just cold damage and water that will make it not work instead of acid or fire with the troll. But it's just basic regeneration. Then we have a bite, that's just damage, fire damage. We have a tail attack that can push, knock prone, and then we have this pyroclasm where it's gonna deal fire damage and bludgeoning damage, but again, only damage. So this creature in essence can only really do damage, or maybe push you back and put you prone. So for a challenge rating 10 creature, for me this is really uninteresting. I'll say even the basic dragon can be more dynamic because it can at least fly. It doesn't have to be in the middle of creatures like this Trexlog clottle has to be when it's using pyroclasm. So this is just really, really, for me, boring creature design. There's nothing interesting about this creature. It's damage, it'll maybe knock you prone. That's it. And that's a shame because we really need more fun elementals. In 5th edition, we already have this issue where most of the elementals we do get, at least in the monster manual, they're just really, really boring. Sacks of hit points that deal damage. Yes, then there's the Riverine. And the Riverine is a fey creature. It has legendary resistance. We're up at challenge rating 12 now. It has the Flood Strike that just deals damage. It has some spell casting where it can cast Control Water. Not typically a spell you'd use a lot in combat. It has Fog Cloud, which is quite underwhelming, especially if you're gonna either decide between doing 2 attacks that can potentially deal 50 damage, or you're gonna cast Fog Cloud. And that's Greater Restoration, which of course is just fine. It may be useful for it. It can teleport, and that's the only bonus action it gets. It's teleport, and when you're using a swim speed of 50, if you're meeting this in the water, teleporting another 30 feet isn't really a big deal, I'd say. And it has for legendary actions that it can teleport and then deal 5 cold damage. Not very interesting again. And then it can use a deluge where it is a dexterity saving throw and it deals some bludgeoning damage and knocks creatures prone. So once again, this is a challenge rating 12 creature. So it's a powerful creature, it's a dynamic creature. We're up against player characters that have a ton of hit points and deal a lot of damage and can cast 20 different spells. And this creature can, in essence, only deal damage, maybe cast Fog Cloud whenever that's good for it. And then it can teleport around and deal a bit of damage. That's it. So not very impressed with the Riverine, not at all impressed with the design of it. Nope. Bakunava, and we are at the challenge rating 12 again. So this has even less hit points and armor class, which makes it just very squishy for 12 hit points. But that's a side note. I want to speak more about the design features itself. So it has the bite feature with the swallow feature where it can which we also see on the purple worm, stuff like that, where it swallows a creature, it's blinded, restrains, it deals some lightning damage every turn. If it takes damage, it spits out the creature, and its creature can also exit after the Bakunava dies. Then it has Storm Slam, which just deals bludgeoning and thunder damage, and then pushes a creature 10 feet away. Might be useful to push creatures sometimes, but it's not the most impactful feature to have. Then it has legendary actions where it can either swim without provoking opportunity attacks, it can make another Storm Flame attack, or it can do a lightning strike against the dexterity saving throw and lightning damage. Once more, we're just dealing damage. The only interesting feature here is the bite and swallow feature, and while I think it's great that they put that on there, it's also not something new. So I would have loved to see it get some bonus actions, something else that could make it a bit more dynamic, because as it is, the Bakunava is barely more interesting than the original Purple Worm, which is, when you look at it, quite boring. Yeah, so for me, another miss on what potential we could have had at CR12. Then we have the Pari. This is a Celestial, and we love getting new Celestials because there just isn't enough Celestials in 5e Dungeons & Dragons. Challenge rating 13, so we're really getting up there. This creature can do 3 mace attacks. Mace attacks deal bludgeoning damage and radiant damage. So damage. It can flood the minds of one creature it can see within 60 feet, and then that deals 5d10 psychic damage and gives it disadvantage on attack rolls until the start of the Pari's next turn. Right, and then it could use Detect Evil and Good. That's not going to be relevant. It can use Cure Wounds, could be relevant. Lesser Restoration could be relevant. Commune, again, not very relevant. Dispel Evil and Good, barely relevant. So, for me, this creature, this angel, this Celestial, it has that one interesting feature, disorienting futures. But if you look at the damage that deals, or potentially deals against a good saving throw, we're dealing 27 damage in place of 3 mace attacks. So this creature, the Pari, would have to be in a really weird situation for it to feel that disorienting futures is better than just doing 3 mage attacks, which has the potential to do 66 damage or 3 times as much damage as disorienting futures. The spells it has, Cure Wounds is good, sure, but Cure Wounds even at 6th level is very rarely going to be better than just hitting other creatures 6 times. In combat, at least. Outside of combat, that's a whole different thing. But in combat, I have a hard time seeing this creature ever doing anything else than just hitting 3 times with its mace. And at challenge rating 13, having 150 hit points, 180 hit points, 16 AC, and dealing 60 damage potentially as the only thing you can do makes this creature really, really lackluster. For me, I think it's just bad design, I have to be honest. I don't think they've balanced the Angels, the Celestials features against its attacks, and I don't think they've given it enough. I don't think it needs to have those bonus actions and reactions to be interesting at CR 13. But that's just my opinion. And we get the Haint, which is an undead creature, and we're looking at a creature that can do sorrowful touch attacks. It deals psychic damage, so that's a bit more interesting because a lot of characters can get resistances. Very rarely do you get resistance to psychic damage, so that's something. It can change shape, doesn't really matter. And then it has Shared Sorrow, where it can force a wisdom saving throw or incapacitate the creature, and the creature then basically stays incapacitated until it succeeds on the saving throw. And the only caveat here is it can only do it on a creature that is missing hit points. Challenge rating 7, fine. It actually deals a reasonable amount of damage for challenge rating 7 with all the psychic damage it can dish out. But what else does it do? It deals psychic damage. It can maybe incapacitate a creature. Maybe a DC 14 wisdom saving throw is not that difficult. So again, in combat, this creature is just not very entertaining, to put it bluntly. And then the last creature we're going to look at is the Whistler. This is a challenge rating 9 creature. It has blurred form, so attacks against it have disadvantage. It deals psychic damage with its attacks. It has an otherworldly melody where it can target 2 creatures and they must succeed on wisdom saving throws or take 33 psychic damage and become frightened of the Whistler. So it's psychic damage, and maybe frighten, and that's it. And then there's the teleport 20 feet, because 30 feet is probably out of fashion. I don't know why it's 20 feet all of a sudden. Again, doesn't really matter. This creature is so close to an invisible stalker that, okay, yeah, it doesn't deal force damage, it deals psychic damage, and it can frighten a creature. Frighten is not the worst condition in the world to be targeted by. It's also really easy to succeed on wisdom saving throws for most characters. So once again, it just doesn't do anything new. I don't think there's anything fun about this design. I don't think this is a very interesting combatant. So my overall thoughts on these monsters, having gone through all of them, is that I am unfortunately a bit disappointed with what they've done here. And I don't know if it's because we have a lot of different authors for the adventures. And again, I haven't read through all of the adventures. I don't know how good or bad they are. So having different authors, maybe not all of them are the greatest monster designers. You can be really, really good at making adventures and not have a lot of experience making monster design. Maybe it's just the direction Wizards of the Coast want to take their monsters, like really keep it simple, which I think at this point in the game is a mistake. I really loved seeing how they sort of did some more interesting things with monsters in newer publications. So seeing them sort of, for me at least, take a step back here and really stick to the basics and not do anything too interesting. I think that's a step backwards. I'm not a huge fan of seeing the bonus actions just going to, you can move 30 feet, you can teleport 30 feet, because of course mobility is nice, but you can already move, the creature can already move on its turn. It's not very often that these things matter that much or make it that much more interesting to fight against. I'd much rather see bonus actions and reactions that actually sort of influence how the creature plays and frustrates the players and maybe affects them in some way, debilitates them, changes how the combat goes. And not seeing the new creatures in this book doing this, like generally, some of them are better than others, I think is a bit disappointing, and I hope that it's not indicative of the direction that Wizards of the Coast are going with their monster design, because I really think that we can do better and that they should do better at this point in 5e's life cycle, where at least a lot of us have been playing for a long time, and it's really, it would be really great to have monsters that did more than what we got in the original monster manual. And I will say that these monsters are better than most, like the general, baseline quality is higher than it was in the monster manual, because a lot of the monsters in the monster manual are really boring, but it's not that much higher, and I think it's actually lower than some of the publications we've gotten recently, such as the Critical Role Adventure, stuff like that. So yeah, that's my thoughts on the new stat block, and I'm back making YouTube videos. I will be putting out I was about to promise a ton of videos, but probably just a weekly video, maybe 2 a week. So I'm happy to be back doing that. If you want to support what we do and maybe throw in a vote about which videos I would make, then head over to patreon.com/eventyr, which is where you can sign up to be a patron, join the Discord, vote on stuff, and also get monthly encounters included in your Patreon membership and access to our apps and all that good stuff. It's also what keeps this channel ad-free, or at least mostly ad-free, no unskippable mid-rolls and all that stuff. So yeah, we really appreciate your support over there. Beyond that, there's not a whole lot left to say, except thank you so much for watching, and I hope that I'll see you in the next video.